Hi, everybody. We're coming on very late tonight because it just can't be helped. Let's see. It's you know, uh, definitely Christmas time, and I hope everyone's enjoying it. And just a lot to get done. And of course, let's see if I got some kind of notice. That is amazing. So it looks like I'm on. Looks good. Okay, because we are being shadow banned. Um, which is to be expected when when you have a case this big, when you have a case this big that will shake the very foundations of our military and our judicial system, especially in El Paso, right there on borderland, where so much of the political um, strife is about, the whole, topic of building a wall, selling parts of a wall for $1 or $5 or whatever, and you won't get it. You won't get a red cent for this wall to protect our southern border or our northern border. But we're going to send billions of dollars to foreign countries and spend trillions of dollars in Afghanistan, the Middle East, and then we'll leave all of our equipment there because we can't bring it home, right? Because, what happened to it. My opinion is they trafficked it, they sold it and pocketed the money, and therefore they didn't have the equipment to bring back home from Afghanistan. That's my opinion. Um, you know, um, that hasn't been proven in a court. That has been just the experience with 4 years with our son's case. Um, so we are at 1,612 days, right? And it is almost 1 o'clock in the morning here. We are absolutely burning the midnight oil, but we have so much breaking news to tell you. Um, and So we'll just begin with saying that our son was a whistleblower there at Fort Bliss, joined the military when he was 18, got to Fort Bliss at 18. He was a distinguished undergraduate for basic training and for um, advanced individual training for his cycle. He was awarded $500 for that. It was a big deal. He made rank very quickly before his peers because he had, when he was 15, clept out of 6 hours of college mathematics and also 6 hours of German language, and was studying for more CLEPs. He was homeschooled. Um, and 18 years old, being living in Europe, he really had very little experience driving, but he had a lot of experience about people around the world, um, and different topics, very, very different um, atmosphere that he was raised in, since he, you know, primarily was living in Longford, Ireland. And of course, Heidelberg, Germany, traveling a lot, going. He joined the army from Korea, South Korea. So that just tells you a lot. The last really big trip that we took together was to Israel. We went to Israel together as a family, and well, of course, Korea, but um, like a vacation trip was 2016. We all went to, not all of us, but most of our family went to Israel, which was just life changing. Really, it's a life changing trip if you've never been. Um, so, just to give you, just a little bit of a picture of who Richard was. And he wrote letters, right? He wrote letters. So he wrote a letter from basic training to his grandparents, his Omi and his Opie. And that also should tell you something. We've posted it up. I'll post it again. But that should tell you a lot about his character, that he would document things, right? That he had good control of his handwriting skills. Um, and at the age of 18, and that he documented um, his experiences. And I know that I've told the audience before that Rob, he's kept a journal ever since I can remember. He's kept a journal, and so Richard has um, these mentors, this example set before him to document things, and so absolutely, Richard documented what he was reporting there at Fort Bliss when he arrived, where he told us it was so bad. It was so very, very, very bad. It was really bad. Um, and, you know, so there's 4 years of tampering with Richard's cases, his whistleblowing case, what he was reporting on. Of course, the retaliation against him, that was just a huge examples of tampering and manipulation of who Richard is, the abuse of power in order to try to document a retaliation to smear Richard, since he was a whistleblower and probably one of the biggest cases in American history. The Iran-Contra pales in comparison to Richard's case, to the weapons trafficking going on in his unit. We've connected it in El Paso, on Fort Bliss. Also, the child trafficking that is widely known, the 325,000 unaccompanied. Look, they say it so sweet, don't they? Unaccompanied children. No, that means they're taken. You don't have 325,000 unaccompanied children unless they're taken. These are taken children. So what are we running there on Fort Bliss, right? What are we running? We're running a trafficking operation. And the leadership has condoned, turned a blind eye, or they're participating in this trafficking operation on Fort Bliss. Narcotics trafficking, human trafficking, sex trafficking, children trafficking, weapons trafficking, ammunition trafficking, whatever is not bolted down, they're going to traffic it, right? And they're going to put um, the soldiers at risk. And when you have that kind of level of criminality going on a military base, lives are lost. And not just lives lost by murder or by suicide, also mentally, right? Because of the rape problems. We know that. We know that with Asia Graham. And then that leads into other kind of problems. And we know by the many witnesses, the soldiers that were stationed there at Fort Bliss, they have told us they were so happy to get away from Fort Bliss with their own lives. Okay. And that, there was a lot of mental problems. That's why there was this drug problem. That's why, they have the barracks there, and they put the Class 6 right by the barracks, right? So that is very, very poor leadership, a failure of leadership to do that, especially when the soldiers are being extorted, when they are, because we did a, a complaint about the extortion complaints that we were getting on Fort Bliss, the fearing for lives. We have a video where I go up to a soldier's home that had screamed out at me that he knew something about my son's case. And I went to his door. He was shaking. They were so fearful of their lives. And he just wanted me to leave because he was so afraid of his life. The intimidation, um, the shaking, where you have Command Sergeant Major Jakovitz shaking in his boots. I mean, literally, you could just see him shaking because he was so fearful. He was so fearful. When you see Brigadier General James Stewart morph right in front of you, right in front of you, after being retaliated against. There's no doubt in my mind that he was retaliated against, because when I first met him, he was just a man to be respected, a general to be respected, and a very, very caring, down to earth individual that happened to be a general. And you could tell he was putting everything he could into his position for the good of his soldiers. Within weeks, well, within days of helping us, he was sent away. When he came back, wow, what a cold-blooded general. He had been morphed. I compare it to Lord of the Rings, where you take an elf and you turn him into an orc. They manipulate you so bad, they do a psyop on you. That, and a fear. He was so afraid. He went from a man of honor to just a fearful creature. A creature. Afraid. And this is supposed to be a man over our volunteer sons and daughters. Now, just to give you a little sense of what's at stake and why this case is so big, is just the narcotics trafficking is $90 billion a year. Okay? It's huge. So when you add in 325,000, now we're getting 500,000, trafficked children, taken children, right? They're unaccompanied, they're taken. And you're trafficking them because now we don't know where they're at. They're mostly dead. And then you add to that the weapons trafficking, and add to that even more valuable, profitable is the ammunition trafficking. And then what about the night vision goggles? What about the armor, right? What about the uniforms? We know just lately when President Un of South Korea did those 6 hours, declared those 6 hours of martial law, that a Chinese illegal in California was being arrested for trying to send tactical move storage units full of military grade weapons, ammunition, even American military army uniforms coming out of Texas to North Korea. We know that Fort Bliss is absolutely engaged in all kinds of criminal trafficking and criminal activities. And the leadership, like I said, has either turned a blind eye, which they don't, participated in, or condoned it and just went on, right? So, and this has put our military in such danger. These are our sons and daughters, okay? Our sons and daughters that volunteer. And they now have been exposed to violence, and we know that totally. Exploitation, we know that totally, 100%. And even death and murder. And we know that. We know that by the own admission of the DOD. And so we're getting feedback back that we're not alone in knowing this information, and that there is a real possibility that President Trump, as the really as the leader of our military, as the chief law enforcement officer. You know, a lot of people don't know that he's the chief law enforcement officer and in charge of our military, the commander in chief of our military, that he has a duty to rectify the problem of Fort Bliss there in El Paso that is operating a human trafficking, child trafficking, weapons trafficking, drug trafficking, exposing our soldiers to that. 12 years old, 14-year-olds living in the barracks, being pimped out, the violence, the exploitation, the death, the murder, everything. So this is a military, U.S. Army military base that is doing harm to our military service members and their families. This is a national security issue, and the serious consideration, and I don't even think it should be a consideration. There should be no doubt. Shut it down. Shut down Fort Bliss. Shut it down now to save the physical and mental souls of our volunteer sons and daughters, and for the betterment of El Paso. Now, that is really scary for a lot of people because they're like, what's going to happen to us? What's going to happen? Faith is believing in something that you can't see, that you can't understand. And fortunately, we've already been through this. We went through this at Heidelberg. We were some of the last people to leave Heidelberg. When Heidelberg, when the military left there, and a huge presence. Patrick Henry Village, Mark Twain Village, Nachrichter Kaserne, a huge military presence in Heidelberg, Germany. And Rob, of course, that's where Richard where we were stationed there when we adopted Richard. He was baptized at our All Saints Chapel there on Nachrichter Kaserne, the military caserne, right next to Mark Twain Village. Um, we lived across the street practically from Patrick Henry Village, and could ride our bikes on there and do our laundry there. Um, for years we were almost over 20 years in Europe. Um, Years and years, we have so many memories there. And so I want to, because there's so much to tell you today, but this is a big deal to us. Um, to the people of El Paso that are watching, Heidelberg is doing just fine. Matter of fact, Heidelberg is doing better than when the U.S. military was there. And the people that lived there that were working uh, on the military installation, working with the Americans, because that at the same time Heidelberg was shutting down, so was Mannheim. Mannheim, I believe, shut down a little bit before. Amazing military installation too. And, there were a lot of civilians that worked for the American military there. And, there was a lot of fear. What's going to happen now? Who can I work for, right? And I want to say that they're doing just fine. That there is something better out there, and something better than trafficking children, trafficking weapons, trafficking ammunition. This is the El Paso cartel. What else do you want to call it? The Fort Bliss cartel? The El Paso Fort Bliss cartel? There's something better than that. Better than something that, you have then a whole industry servicing these trafficking criminal groups, trying to exploit and take advantage of our young sons and daughters there up to no good. Like I'm thinking about Berlin, I'm thinking about Danae Katzen, I'm thinking about Rosa Maria Valdez Garcia, I'm thinking about Lilani Hart, because we've been told that she was running some nefarious activity in a hotel, right? Um, and of course, she's a prime suspect in the murder of our son. And there is, all of this evidence. We know she's a criminal. We know that she arranged, I guess that would be the right word, for a 7-year-old to stay in her home with her family members that have a history of abusing children in the worst possible way. And themselves in the worst possible way. And this 7-year-old was in that way assaulted in her bedroom by multiple members of her household, and she didn't even timely report it when she arranged to have that happen because she wanted to go out to dinner, or to a function. So she's, the world has better to offer El Paso than Fort Bliss. And the world has something better to offer our veterans, better than what's going on in our Veteran Administration, um, benefit offices, IDS Pablo offices. And I don't just believe that, I lived through that. And I lived through that as a civilian, well, a spouse of a civilian employee. As a civilian employee contractor. So that is, there was something better. And, it's okay. And to be honest with you, uh, Heidelberg shut down and Mannheim shut down, and I didn't know anything. And I lived there for way over a decade, I think over 15 years. And I had no knowledge of any kind of trafficking going on there from, you know, the base itself being the base of the trafficking, right? But Fort Bliss, there is no doubt. There's no doubt. So, if things can be better when you're having to shut down a perfectly functioning, beautiful military installation, things are really going to be better when you're shutting down a criminal network operating with impunity, harming our volunteer sons and daughters of Fort Bliss. Fort Bliss needs to shut down. There is no second thought in our minds. Fort Bliss needs to shut down. And when we received word today that this is a consideration of the new administration coming in, that they would shut down Fort Bliss, it's like hallelujah. Hallelujah. You're talking about a military installation that retaliated against whistleblowers that were whistleblowing against the worst offenses of the drug trafficking, the human trafficking, the child trafficking, the weapon smuggling, against Walmart. Don't forget that Glennon Oakley Jr. was found dead in his barracks. That not only was Asia Graham found dead in her barracks after whistleblowing because of being assaulted herself in the barracks and them moving her suspect, the assailant, or and who has been convicted, right? Who has been convicted of the assault, 2 doors down from her as a retaliation. Okay, well, we're just going to move the person that did this really close to you. We'll move him 2 doors down from you. And then her friend, then what is it, a couple months later, was also lost her life. And I don't want to make any claims. You can read it all, but I'm just saying that's a lot of dead soldiers in a very short period of time, and I didn't even mention all of them. And the other and these are young, beautiful. I have a beautiful video of Asia Graham when she was joining the military. She was so excited, like Richard, right? and it's just heartbreaking. And the video of Glendon Oakley Jr. being so proud. I'm a soldier. I did what I can. I wanted to help. The next day he's crying. He's scared. He's scared for his life because of the failed leadership on Fort Bliss and the lack of care, the lack of protecting our whistleblowers or any of our service members, or holding to account those that are committing the crimes, committing the retaliation, the abuse of power, the bullying, the harm done to our soldiers. This is a national security threat. And they're calling Fort Bliss the death camp. A death camp, y'all. They're calling Fort Bliss a death camp. Let me tell you, we discussed the analysis of comparing Fort Bliss to a death camp. And you know what? You can do it. You can do it because the leadership failing to protect its own, its soldiers, its civilians, and leaving them vulnerable to the criminal organizations operating under, right there under the radar. This kind of failure of leadership, the negligence that led to the deaths, the harm, the exploitation of our soldiers, is absolutely a definition that is fitting to use with a death camp description. If Fort Bliss can be described legally as a death camp, compared to a death camp, then it needs to be closed ASAP yesterday. And I'm not the one that compared it to a death camp. I'm saying this is what is happening there. This is what is being compared there. And they have the right legally to compare it with a death camp because of what's going on Fort Bliss, what has gone on in our son's case, what went on with the Walmart mass shooting case, what has gone on with the failed leadership with Sean Bernabe, with under Michael Garrett, under the systemic problems, Eisenhower, and now Taylor, right? And there's many more. They have been a failure and allowed their command to run a death camp. Wow. So that's what's going on Fort Bliss. We are hearing that they are under heavy scrutiny for I want to say Richard's case, but I think it's for a wide range. I think it's partially for what they found in the desert, but for this systemic criminal trafficking network that is called a death camp that is called Fort Bliss, and it's not Fort Bliss at all. It's not a Bliss, and it needs to be shut down. So I hear that that's being considered, and that needs to happen. And El Paso will be just fine because El Paso is an ancient city, which means it'll be just fine. It's in such an amazing location on amazing land. When the people that live there, and I always love living there, I was born right there on White Sands. It's so amazing. That's why they want it, right? That's why people want it. That's why, it's such an important spot, and being on the border is such a blessing. And they've turned it into a curse. This criminal gang that could not operate so effectively without Fort Bliss being there. I mean, if you want to traffic weapons, look at the whole 325,000, hundreds of thousands of children. That was through Fort Bliss, y'all. The weapons, the ammunition, and if you want to sell drugs, if you want to sell sex, you know, and you want those to have money, you get these young soldiers in there, right? They've exploited our soldiers. It's yeah. So you get it. I know you get it. Um and so it does need to be shut down. The other news, of course, is Kelly Childress. Kelly Childress is the public defender there in El Paso who has, made public that she knows darn well that Bill Hicks is up to no good. And, I think she has fallen short, even though we do appreciate that she wants to sanction the district attorney's office, Bill Hicks, with all of his tampering. Because, look, we have Team Find Richard Halliday. Because of our investigation, because of the cover up, because of being blocked by, all the indications that District Attorney Bill Hicks, who is not even a district attorney, but is an imposter, is a usurper, that he wasn't responding like he should to our family, to our son's case, and red flags went up. And then you do an investigation, what's going on, and you find out that he's not even installed properly, that when he did all of that, he even tampered with the timestamps. So he tampered with official documents, that he would also even, and we have the audios, and we have the audios, we have the documentation from it, we have the video of the we have all the hard evidence, the confessions. So, when you have video, audio, and documents of tampering, of scheming and tampering, and being a usurper, and then the 59 migrant cases that were riding at the border, and they're withholding information and tampering and withholding information. And we know that there's been tampering, and because of audio, video, and documents, that they're tampering, and withholding information from our son's case, tampering, withholding information from the Walmart mass shooting case, tampering and withholding information from 39, was it 59? 59, let's just say 39 I think it's 59. 59 migrant cases. Then the public defender comes out and says he's tampering, withholding information, some information being exculpatory uh, possibility in the cases, which would mean that person would be innocent right away, automatically, better than any let's say pardon by your daddy, right? It would be better than that because you'd be found innocent, because evidence proves you innocent, even though you're innocent until proven guilty. But they're manipulating, just like they're manipulating the Walmart case, just like they manipulated our son's cases, because his case of the whistleblowing, the cases that he was reporting against Fort Bliss for being a death camp. And then, of course, his murder case, the retaliation case. So, not protecting a whistleblower case, right? I mean, come on, what about failure to protect us with our threats, the threats that were made against us? Because we're not allowed to find out what happened to our son. We have the right to find out what happened to our son. And this is on a military installation. And the DOD admitted that Richard was murdered on Fort Bliss. So, when you have that kind of information, and then the public integrity, the public defender is, not giving the full account of what's going on. Because don't forget that you have the El Paso Criminal Law Magistrate Court that is totally non-functioning because it has no authority, because there's not one judge on there that's legitimate, not one judge that has been elected. So all of them are just impersonators without any authority, botching every case they touch. So you've got a usurper as a DA botching every case he touches, every case he tampers with, every case he withholds evidence from. And then you've got judges that have the power to decide how cases are moving forward, how quickly they're moving forward, but yet they're not even judges because they're not even elected, and therefore everything is null and void because they're violating the Texas Constitution requirements for that position. You can't say you're a president of the United States. You have to go through the whole motion to become the president of the United States, or be vice president. And then something happens and you're made in, not a takeover, but there's a process for everything. And they have violated that process, which makes them illegitimate. Can you imagine an entire court that handles over 90% of the cases in El Paso is now an illegitimate court? And you have the public defender, Kelly Childress, saying she's afraid. Yeah, she's afraid. because she does not want to say what she's supposed to say and do her duty to say for the sake of all of the defendants that she is supposed to be defending. She's supposed to be defending them, and she's supposed to be working with the DA's office. So what does she do? She takes one little needle out of the haystack, or the one little block off or whatever, and she says, well, yeah, he tampered. He tampered and he withheld evidence, and he should be sanctioned. No, he needs to be arrested. And you need to talk, this is to Kelly Childress, and you need to talk outwardly with the press and say, we are in a real pickle in El Paso. We have an illegitimate court that I depend on for 90% of my cases. And we have a usurper as a DA that likes to tamper, withhold evidence from the cases that I have to work with and defend these defendants. And we have an illegal medical examiner, chief medical examiner, who cannot hold that position because he's illegal. They're in a real pickle. So you've got El Paso legal and judicial system all messed up, and you have Fort Bliss that is being called a death camp. Now, I don't know if you hear this on the news. I don't think you do. You have to come to Team 5 Richard Halliday to hear it. So, please let your congressperson know. I hear that Veronica Escobar is, she really goofed up everything for Harris, didn't she? Was handed 1.4 billion dollars. 3 times the amount of money, more than 3 times the amount of money that the Trump campaign had, and she goofed it all up, spent it on Oprah and twerking, and not addressing the wants, the questions, the concerns of the electorate. She goofed. Who would give her that kind of money? And, who would want her to be a representative? Because let me tell you, she's pretty dirty. She is pretty dirty. We have firsthand knowledge of how dirty she can be. So, yeah, that's please contact all of your friends on all social media and let them know all of this, because I think that's the best way to get the word out. Thank you, Anicia, for coming on. Thank you, Martha, for coming on. God is so good. God will prevail. I have faith, and I know what I feel in my heart. Pray, pray, and love. They need to pay for what they've done to all our families. God is greater than all of this. Yes. Richard is a hero and an angel in heaven. Yes, and I believe in angels, and I believe that absolutely he has absolutely helped with all of this, and God's hand is all over this. I can't, over and over again. So it is a real miracle what is happening, and that that we have been notified that the administration is considering shutting down Fort Bliss. We're giving a heads up to everybody at Fort Bliss. Get your CV in gear. Get your CV in gear. And I think you're going to be very happy, because I can't even imagine the toxic environment you've had to work on Fort Bliss. With Fort Bliss being called a death camp, I can't even imagine what you've had to do working over there at the emergency intake center, what you've had to do working in JAG, what you've had to do or deal with working in IG, in the Fort Bliss, El Paso Police Department, in the CID office. I can't even imagine. Working at the G3 of the 32nd AdCom, working in intelligence, seeing soldiers being exploited, harmed, and even murdered and killed by the situation. Yeah. No, a Fort Bliss, a military installation should be even safer than the mama's home, right? With all of the security that we provided, all the funding for security that we provided, and they've exploited us, they've betrayed us, they've been absolutely negligent in their duties. So, continued prayers. Thank you so much. All the innocent children, yes. She did not address all the innocent children because it's their duty. They're supposed to know what's going on at the courthouse, what's going on in the DA's office, what's going on um with any kind of crime going on. So, yeah, so that's huge news. So I think that this evidence that we have on Bill Hicks, the new evidence that we have, absolutely hard evidence against John Briggs and his intentional interference with the cases, specifically. There's more cases than just the Walmart case, but specifically also including the Walmart mass shooting case and, of course, our son's case. Of course, that's going to be in there. A question of it. But the hard evidence we have is on several cases, specifically on the Walmart mass shooting case. And we have, of course, that corroborated by Loretta Lynn Hewitt, the prosecutor that was on that case that got out of Dodge. She resigned in protest. So that the DA's office was also toxic. Of course, Fort Bliss being toxic, and of course, the courthouse being the magistrate court being toxic. Yeah, absolutely. So thank you so much, everyone. And we will be back tomorrow, God willing, on Christmas Eve, right? Well, it is Christmas Eve right now. It's Christmas Eve right now. My Omi, my grandmother, who was such a huge influence on our family and especially on me. This is the anniversary date of her becoming an angel. And I believe that she has absolutely had a hand in strengthening and giving us strength through all of this. So, with my dad, with Richard, with my Omi, with so many people on our side, and of course, above it all, God's hand on all of this. Things are absolutely starting to happen, and I just want to say thank you and keep praying because we don't know, what's going to come up. So thank you so much, and we will be back tomorrow, God willing.